Okay, so this is a really fun section. John and I had a great time putting this together. But before we hop into this, I do want to show you the primer that John put together for us. It's basically a quick hitter cheat sheet just to give you the Cliff Notes version of every team. So when you're building lineups, I think a lot of you are going to be building, a couple by hand, and it will give you the Cliff Notes version of it. This is it in the background. I'm going to post a link for it on Twitter. If for whatever reason you miss it, email me, send me a DM. But this is what it looks like. He just went team by team and just give a quick hitter on the team as a whole. Some of the players that are worth taking a look at week one, with some notes for each guy on each team that will have fantasy value this year and especially this week. These players down here at the bottom, these are some guys that are CFL studs but are currently hurt or with NFL teams. And typically, if these guys get cut by NFL teams, they'll be back around week 10 or so, I think, of the CFL season. Because if you get cut by an NFL team, you can come back to the CFL and sign with your former team or play for your former team. So these are some names of situations to just have in your back pocket and chamber for later in the season. If you're still playing that long, those are some good names to have. But yeah, he did an amazing job of going team by team to either give you an NFL player comparison or a Cliff Notes version of what each guy is bringing to their team. So we'll dive into the team comparisons, and this was probably the most fun of the entire project that we had. So the BC Lions, the British Columbia Lions, they play in Vancouver, and this is a team that it's the furthest team out west in the league, and they play in a dome, so it's the only team where you never have to worry about weather, and that's going to be kind of sneaky with some of the weather issues that we're seeing in the forecast. I mean, it's not baseball; they're still going to play the game, but if it's sloppier, then you might want to avoid and get all in on a Lions and Blue Bombers game stack for Sunday afternoon, because that's another thing too is on the main slates for CFL, the last game is typically going to be one of the lower owned games because guys want to get all of their action in on the first couple of games. So that's just some game theory. But yeah, the Lions, they compare very much to what we're seeing with the Browns. The Lions have Mike Riley. Mike Riley is, I don't understand how this guy hasn't got more of a look in the NFL. He is just a straight up football playing Jesse. He is just there's different tiers to players in the CFL. Like Mike Riley's like way up here. He is in a tier of his own. Like he is a straight up baller. Like he slings it, he runs, like he does it all. He plays with toughness. And he played for Edmonton last year, or for the last couple of years, just put up monster numbers. I think he's been the most valuable player. They call it something different, but I want to say like 2 of the last 3 years, or maybe 3 of the last, most outstanding player, I think is what they call it. The guy's just a straight up baller. So there's a lot of excitement this year around the Lions, like there is for the Browns. The Browns have a disgruntled wide receiver in Beckham, getting a new change of scenery, and Duron Carter, who's Chris Carter's son. He washed out with the Colts in the NFL, and he's bounced around a couple teams. And this is kind of like his last stand, because if there were ever a time for him to elevate himself back to one of the best receivers in the league, it's with Mike Riley. So a proud franchise that people have been waiting for them to be good, and is this year that they finally put it together. That'll remain to be seen. But the Lions, if you know nothing about CFL, get as many Lions as you can, as often as you can. The Eskimos, the Edmonton Eskimos, this is Mike Riley's former team. And there's a lot of player movement also year over year in the CFL, more so than the NFL. It's actually probably most similar to the NBA with the amount of player movement. And like studs will just straight up sign new contracts with new teams or get traded. There's a lot of interesting drama behind the scenes in the CFL like there's in the NBA. But the Eskimos have a quarterback named Trevor Harris. Guy is just gutsy, and he brings it every single game. And it's very much like Aaron Rodgers. Like, they're always going to have a chance in every game just because Rodgers is always going to keep them competitive, and the same thing with Harris. But Harris's big question mark is the same as Rodgers. Takes a lot of hits, hangs in the pocket a little too long, and it's not going to be uncommon if Harris misses any time this year. So this team's loaded up. Riley benefited in this offense. The offense is going to move the ball, and this is another option for you guys to get some good offensive firepower. If some of the people are going to some of the more popular teams, the Eskimos will be anything that Mike Riley does is going to be always in tier A. He's probably going to be the highest salaried quarterback every single week. Anything on the Eskimos is probably a good pivot off of that if you want to get a little different in your lineups. But yeah, this team will go as far as Harris's health will allow them to. The next team is the Calgary Stampeders. They are the model of consistency in the CFL. They just won the Grey Cup last year. Their quarterback, Bo Levi Mitchell, a Texas kid. I've been in Texas 2 weeks, so yeah, Texas boys, one of us. Yeah, this is the guy that you guys get fantasy advice from. I know. It's ridiculous. But yeah, Bo Levi Mitchell, he's just like Brady. Slow and steady wins the race. He's not gonna make many mistakes. The Stampeders' MO is they want to get up on you early and then take their foot off the gas, and they'll just grind you and grind you and grind you. So they typically like to get off to a hot start, just like the Patriots. And when the other team is completely flipping their game plan in the second half, they know exactly what they're going to do. The game's already in hand, and it's just a matter of executing and playing mistake-free football on their way to victory. Their defense has been one of the best, if not the best, last couple of years as well. So don't be surprised if you see the Stampeders defense as the highest priced defense week to week. And Bo Levi, people crap on Bo Levi, and it's not Bo, it's either Mitchell or Bo Levi. So if you want to be in the know of the CFL slang, it's Bo Levi. It's not Bo. It's Mitchell or Bo Levi. So yeah, Bo. They turn around and call him Bo. So Bo Levi gets crapped on in Canada a lot, the way that Brady, outside of Patriots fans, gets crapped on here in the States. The next is the Saskatchewan Roughriders, another proud franchise that peaked a couple years ago. They've been slowly rebuilding, retooling, trying to figure out their identity. It's very similar to the Jets. The Jets, they were rebuilding, and they're coming out of their rebuild mode, and they've been tooling around Sam Darnold, and it's very similar here with the Roughriders. One of the best wide receivers in the game is a guy named Emmanuel Arsenault, and he it's funny because he reminds me a lot of Antonio. He's like Antonio Brown light. He tore his ACL, so he was out all of last year, kind of like Le'Veon Bell sat out all of last year. Like, what a professional. I had pizza tonight, and I'm burping on. I'm so sorry, guys. Got to keep Boston weird, man. So, yeah, those are the similarities. The Rough Riders have tried to rebuild up their defense, just like we've seen with the Jets, and then, building around Darnold. The quarterback for the Rough Riders is a guy named Zach Collaros, and he is a guy that just lit the league on fire a couple years ago and has shown flashes, but hasn't got back to his previous level. He's also battled injuries. So this is a team that the potential's there, but with all the new pieces, it might take them a few weeks to fully get going. But they can definitely hang with anybody in the league. The next team is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. These guys, they bring it every single week. They're not the most talented team in the league, but they give everybody a fight. Their quarterback's Matt Nichols, and he is very much like Phillip Rivers. He's going to he's not the best quarterback in the league, but he's going to make enough plays to keep them competitive. Sometimes he doesn't make as many mistakes as Rivers, doesn't take as many chances as Rivers, but like the guy is just like the epitome of consistency. Every single game he's going to be around 200 and 250 yards, couple touchdowns, and they have one of the best workhorse running backs in the league that's just on the field constantly. So this is a team that, again, seems to be under-owned every single week outside of their running back, but it's a good way to get some decent exposure to some guys with some high ceilings with lower ownership. They've been competitive the last couple of years. Just can't seem to get over the hump, very similar to the Chargers. The next team is the Hamilton Tiger Cats, also known as the Ticats, and they are quarterbacked by Jeremiah Masoli, the former Oregon player. And these guys want to get in the track meet, just like the Chiefs. They want to put points on you. They're not as well-oiled as a machine as the Chiefs. The Chiefs can get after every single week. There's some weeks where the Ticats will put up like 8 points, and you're like, dude, I thought these guys were good. So just understand if you're going to go the Masali and Tiger Cat route and stack them up with some of his receivers, just understand that it's going to be a boomer bust play. But because of the boomer bust nature, you're going to be able to get him at relatively lower ownership. Masali is probably going to be about the third owned quarterback every week. It's always going to be Riley first, and then whomever has the best matchup. Usually whoever's playing Montreal is 2, and then Masali is going to be 3. But yeah, we talked about Brandon Banks. Brandon Banks is on this team as a wide receiver, also a punt returner. He's pretty much like Tyreek Hill. The guy can flat out fly. He can eat up yards in a hurry. And the games that, Tyreek Hill goes for like 2 touchdowns and 200 yards, 10 catches, and breaks a slate, Brandon Banks, formerly of the Washington Redskins, has that same kind of ceiling to break the slate in the CFL. The next team is the Toronto Argonauts. I don't know what an Argonaut is. I think I Googled it. It's like, I don't even know. It's Canada, man. Like, that's why they're our little brother from the north. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anybody calls them that. Like, we love Canada, I don't know what an Argonaut is, but the talent's there. But this team can be very frustrating. They're rolling out a new quarterback this year, James Franklin, and he has all of the tools to be successful. He's the same kid that played at Missouri about 5 or 6 years ago. I think he got a shot with the Packers. It didn't work out. He couldn't stay healthy. And there's a lot of hype around him and his ceiling, but he just hasn't been able to put it together. And you see flashes of it, very similar to Marcus Mariota. It's like sometimes Marcus Mariota, you're like, dude, like, there's a reason this guy was, a top 2 draft choice a few years ago, and then other games he looks totally clueless on top of the injury history. And this is a team that will struggle with its identity sometimes. They have a running back named James Wilder Jr. out of Florida State, and the dude is a straight-up thumper. Like, he is just like a joy to watch. He's one of those guys that play running back the way the position is supposed to be played. He can catch the ball. He can hit the holes. He can get it outside, and he welcomes contact. He's guy is absolutely electric. And then there's some games like the team falls behind and he's a secondary piece. Or there's some games where he's all that they do and Franklin is nowhere to be seen. So this isn't a team that you can stack. You kind of have to pick what angle. You almost have to go with the game script before stacking this game, because if you think it's going to be a Wilder game, Franklin's going to be pretty useless. If you think it's a game that could be a shootout, Wilder can still put up points, but he might be looking at a 15-point game versus a 25, 30-point game. So pretty similar to what we saw last year with the Titans. Sometimes Mariota was non-existent, and then it's, again, 2 years in a row, it took the Titans, 12, 13 weeks before they got Derrick Henry going. We don't have to worry about that with Wilder because he'll get going right away. But just understand that, if he's priced in the 75 to 9,000 range and has an average game, that's why he's going to be very game script dependent. The next team is the Ottawa Redblacks. This is one of the newer franchises. I don't even know what a Redblack is. I think it's a combination of something from the area or I don't know, dude. I don't know what an Argonaut is. I don't know what a Redblack is. Just wait until the next team gets even worse. But all kidding aside, very similar to the Redskins. There's been a lot of turnover. They've just lost Trevor Harris to the Eskimos. They have a younger kid that's just coming in, a dual threat that everyone's excited about, but the cupboard's pretty bare. We don't really know how well Dwayne Haskins is going to do with the Redskins, but I think most of the Redskins fans are just relieved that they finally have a bona fide franchise quarterback to kind of hang their hat on, and I think that's what the sentiment would be for the fans in Ottawa. Bring some hope to the franchise. Could be a disaster. There's every year, it's similar with the NFL. You have a couple of teams that are, always competitive. And then the rest of the league is just kind of cycling from rebuilding to competing, from rebuilding to competing. And the Red Blacks were, I think 2 years ago, were in the Grey Cup. They might have even won. I think they might have beat the Stampeders. I can't remember exactly, but they were pretty competitive. They just lost Trevor Harris, and now they're rolling with a younger quarterback. And because the newer quarterback is relatively unheard of, that might be a great pivot this week to get somebody under-owned. And that's one of the things that we can look for is, there's always one team off. We know who's going to be the chalk. If we want to get contrarian, where do we go? And that's where we would go. The 3 contrarian quarterbacks this week are probably going to be Franklin with the Argonauts, the new kid here with the Red Blacks, and then everybody's favorite, the Alouettes. Alouettes have been like the bottom dwellers for the last couple of years. They actually won a Grey Cup with Mark Trestman, the guy who was the Bears coach for I think 2 years before he got fired. But yeah, this is a team that has been good in the past, just kind of struggling to get out of its own way. They tried the Johnny Manziel experiment last year. I have no idea what an Alouette is, and this is in Montreal, which is like half English, half French speaking, and so like. If you follow any of their Twitters, it'll be tweeted in English and then tweeted in French. So it's just wild because you're watching football and there's news tweeted out in French. You're like, I am not used to this as an American sports fan. But yeah, they have a younger kid, Pipkin, who showed some flashes last year, a little bit injury prone. He's going to be cheap. This might be a guy that few people catch on to right away. And he is one of the quarterbacks that you don't have to stack to do well because he can get his points on his own. But the passing game doesn't always get the volume to feed the receivers to where the quarterback and the wide receiver would pay off, even though he has some really talented wide receivers. So this team compares very similar to the Cardinals, where you have a quarterback that can be electric with some upside, but definitely carries some question marks, some savvy veterans. The Cardinals have Larry Fitzgerald. The Alouettes have B.J. Cunningham. The guy's a total baller. The guy would be top 5 receiver in the league if he could ever get some consistent quarterback play, kind of like what we saw with Fitzgerald. When he got the quarterback play, he was a stud, and then every other year it's been a struggle. So, they were second to worst team last year, the worst team the year before that. Anything can happen in the CFL, but it's going to be a struggle if this year was anything like last year when rostering any of their players. And this is usually the team that if you want to get some cheap production going up against their defense, that was the defensive target last year. So hope you guys enjoyed the team comparisons. We'll come back and we'll start looking at some of the lineup construction in the next section and go from there.